Welcome back, detectives. Let's dive into another horrible case. The case of Brett Ryan. Brett Ryan was born in 1980 in Toronto into a large and close-knit family. There were 5 children in the family, and Brett was the second. He had 2 older brothers, Christopher and Leland, and a younger brother, AJ. Brett's parents always tried to instill the right values in their children by promoting a healthy lifestyle. Brett's father worked at a newspaper and was also a fitness trainer. His mother dedicated herself to homemaking and loved growing flowers. Brett's mother could be strict and harsh in raising her 4 sons, while his father was gentle and reserved. Each son in the family pursued his own path. After graduating from high school, Brett enrolled at the University of Toronto. However, he quickly struggled with his studies. After 2 painful breakups, Brett could not concentrate on his studies and eventually decided to drop out of university. Brett felt jealous as he watched his friends and classmates build relationships, get married, and achieve success in life. Meanwhile, he felt like he was not accomplishing anything significant, which made him feel like a failure. After getting a job as a painter, he realized that this career was not suitable for him. At the same time, Brett was concerned about his appearance, spending a lot of money on personal needs and on girls. As a result, he accumulated a large debt of up to 60,000 Canadian dollars, which he had no way to repay. When creditors started demanding money, Brett fell into a deep depression. He felt like a complete failure but did not dare to confess his problems to anyone. In desperation, Brett was determined to find a way out of his difficult situation and make a large sum of money quickly. He decided to rob a bank. On October 20, 2007, he put his plan into action. He chose a bank near his home and created a disguise by covering his face with bandages, pretending to have an injured left arm, limping, and carrying a stack of papers. Brett robbed his first bank by pretending to be sick. He entered and approached the cash register. There, he handed over a note demanding cash and warned the clerk that he was hiding a weapon. Out of fear, the clerk quickly gave Brett the money in the cash register. The amount was only about $1,000, which Brett was not happy about, but he decided not to attract any more attention. So he took the money and left the scene. Brett was caught on security cameras during the robbery. Despite this, he was not caught initially because he avoided using the same technique and changed his disguise each time. Instead of using fake bandages to look like a sick person, he wore a fake beard and hat to hide his identity. His next bank robberies achieved different results. Throughout his 12 bank robberies, Brett accumulated more than $28,000 in cash. He was always evasive, trying to avoid the police. Finally, on June 20, 2008, the police identified Brett, and he was arrested during his 13th attempted robbery. This surprised everyone because Brett had previously volunteered at a children's hospital and was now a robber. Brett was sentenced to 5 years in prison. During his sentence, experts conducted psychological evaluations and concluded that he showed no signs of aggression or violence. Additionally, Brett did not use illegal substances and did not suffer from mental disorders during his sentence. After 2 years, Brett was paroled for good behavior. The prison staff were impressed with him because he was a pleasant, charismatic, and hardworking young man. They felt that he had only made one serious mistake due to the pressure of debt and deserved the second chance. Brett's record showed that he was a model prisoner with a low risk of reoffending. Upon his release, Brett was required to attend a course of psychotherapy and report any problems he encountered in his family relationships or at work. This helped him avoid reoffending. However, the reality turned out to be much more complicated than Brett had anticipated. The debts were still outstanding, and he could not pay them off. Finding a job was also difficult because no one wanted to hire an ex-convict, even though he had skills in painting. In desperation, Brett declared bankruptcy. Fortunately, his parents supported him financially, allowing him to continue his studies at university, this time in information technology. Brett also continued to see a psychologist under court order and tried to stabilize his life. During therapy, Brett was advised to be more open and honest with the people around him. In September 2011, a friend of Brett's arranged a blind date with a girl named Kristen Baxter. Kristen was a physical therapist, lived alone in an apartment, and had a small dog. She also loved to travel. When Brett met Kristen, they immediately had a special connection. They quickly found they were compatible and attracted to each other. They both loved animals and traveling, which created a bond between them. Not long after, Brett and Kristen began a romantic relationship. Brett and Kristen spent a lot of time together, attending sporting events and hiking. They also went on a vacation together in the Bahamas with Kristen's family. Kristen's dog immediately took a liking to Brett, which made a good impression. Brett's life seemed to be back on track, and he no longer exhibited suspicious behavior. He longed for a quiet and cozy life with his beloved girlfriend. When Brett moved into Kristen's apartment in January 2013, their relationship entered a new phase. They began thinking about getting married. However, Brett was hiding a truth from Kristen. In reality, he was not the person she thought he was. While Brett's brothers were building their careers and becoming independent, he was just studying and living off his parents' money. He hid his real life and focused only on enjoying the vibrant city life with Kristen. They enjoyed going to cozy restaurants and swimming in the pool at night, but Brett never revealed the truth about his circumstances. Brett and Kristen often traveled to warm countries. However, their lives were turned upside down when Brett's father suddenly passed away. Brett moved in with his mother to help with the funeral arrangements and support her during this difficult time. During this period, Brett confessed to his mother, Susan, that he loved Kristen very much and dreamed of marrying her. However, he did not have enough money to buy a decent engagement ring, so he hesitated to propose. Brett's mother was touched by her son's words and gave him money to buy an expensive ring. With a luxurious diamond ring, Brett proposed to Kristen, and she accepted. The couple began to prepare for their wedding. However, Brett still had many worries about the future. He didn't know how he would support his family. He also had legal issues, bankruptcy, and debt that he hadn't disclosed to Kristen. To address these issues, Brett decided to focus on finding a decent, stable job. In early 2016, Brett finally found a good job in the IT field. He was very happy to share this news with Kristen, and they decided to celebrate with their families. However, everything changed when his new employer learned about his criminal past and fired him immediately. This took a serious toll on Brett's self-esteem. To avoid upsetting Kristen, Brett decided not to tell her about this failure. Instead, he lied and said that he would work remotely from home. Every day, when Kristen went to work, Brett would pretend to work on the computer. Kristen was very happy, thinking that Brett would start earning a lot of money and they would be able to stand on their own. Kristen started preparing for the wedding scheduled for September 16, 2016. She chose the most beautiful and expensive options they could afford. A luxurious banquet hall was booked for the ceremony, and the bachelor party before the wedding was to be held at a luxurious ski resort. The couple even started looking for a spacious and cozy house to settle down in after the wedding, as they were tired of living in a small apartment. Susan was extremely happy, thinking that her son was independent, had graduated from college, and had a high-paying job. She looked forward to the day when her son would get married and move into his own house. But the reality was completely the opposite. Brett had lied about all of this. He was trapped in his own fabricated thoughts and could not get out. In an effort to earn money, Brett took on any side job he could and even helped his mother with housework to earn money. He went to see his mother every day, looking for things to do and fixing things to get paid. Susan became suspicious when she saw her son hanging around the house all day, constantly doing this and that instead of going to work. If Brett made as much money as he claimed, why did he need these odd jobs? Susan began to ask her son difficult questions, which Brett initially tried to avoid. But then he remembered his therapist's advice about the importance of honesty and finally dared to confess his troubles to his mother. He begged his mother for significant financial support, promising to continue looking for work. However, his mother was extremely disappointed and angry when she learned the truth. She refused to give him any money and threatened to tell Kristen everything. Brett was extremely angry at his mother's harsh words, and he feared that Kristen would leave him if she found out the truth. Brett was desperate because he didn't want to lose his girlfriend and have to move back in with his mother. He feared that if that happened, he would feel like a loser for the rest of his life. So he decided to carry out a strange plan. Unable to legally purchase a gun due to his criminal record, Brett chose to purchase a crossbow to avoid attracting unnecessary attention. He purchased the old crossbow with cash. The next day, Brett returned to his mother's house under the pretext of helping with home repairs to earn money. However, he had other intentions. On August 25, 2016, his mother, Kristen, woke up early as usual and went to work. Meanwhile, Brett stayed home and pretended to work. In reality, he was preparing for another act. To avoid suspicion, Brett created a keystroke automaton on his computer to give the impression that he was working. He also set up an automatic email function to send at a specific time to create an alibi. Next, Brett gathered all the necessary items for his disguise into a gym bag, including clothes and a wig. To avoid being caught on surveillance cameras, he sneaked out of the house through the fire escape and went to Susan's house incognito, wearing clothes and a wig so that no one would recognize him. However, when he reached the door, he took off all his disguises and went inside. Once inside, Brett tried to convince his mother to give him money. But Susan continued to refuse. A fierce argument broke out between them, with Susan demanding that Brett confess his lie to Kristen. Otherwise, she would expose him herself. As the argument became more heated, Susan sensed something was wrong. She took advantage of the moment when Brett stepped outside and called her eldest son, Chris. She begged Chris to come and help resolve the conflict with Brett. Brett returned to the garage for an important reason: he had hidden a crossbow there earlier. Once he found the weapon, he began to prepare everything for the shot. However, this required more time and effort than he had imagined. At that moment, his mother entered the garage in a rage. Brett quickly found a nearby tool and struck her twice, hitting her in the cheek and ear. She screamed in pain and shock at the sight of her own son attacking her. A fight broke out between them. During the scuffle, both fell to the floor and rolled around, knocking over everything in their path. In the chaos, Brett found a long, dirty rag, and without thinking much, he used it to strangle her. Only after carrying out this act did Brett realize that things had gone terribly wrong. His original murder plan had turned into a nightmare. He remembered that his brother Chris, who had been called by their mother, was about to arrive at the garage. Brett decided to remove his brother from the list of potential witnesses. He jumped up, grabbed the crossbow, and started preparing. A plan to kill Chris formed in Brett's mind. After preparing everything for the new crime, Brett hid in the garage, waiting for Chris. Soon, Chris entered the garage to find their mother, not knowing that he was in danger. Brett quietly approached Chris from behind and shot him in the back of the head. Chris fell immediately. Brett dragged his body close to their mother's and covered it with a tarp. Brett quickly changed his clothes and prepared to run away. However, he did not expect that his younger brother, AJ, was visiting and appeared at the door. For Brett, this was a disastrous situation. Brett began to consider his next move: run away after changing his clothes or stay and kill AJ. He feared that when his brother discovered the bodies, AJ would immediately call the police and he would be arrested. This fear drove Brett to commit another murder. After finding AJ, Brett followed him. Brett approached AJ with the intention of shooting him in the back of the head, just as he had done to Chris. However, this time things did not go as planned. AJ sensed danger and noticed that Brett was carrying a weapon. A scuffle broke out between the two brothers. During the fight, Brett attempted to injure AJ by shooting him in the neck with the crossbow. AJ screamed in pain and fled. He ran out of the house, leaving a trail of blood in the sand, and eventually collapsed from exhaustion in the driveway. It was then that Brett learned that there was another brother sleeping in the house, Leland, 39. He was awakened by AJ's terrified screams. Leland looked out the window and saw his brother covered in blood on the road. Panicked, he rushed to the phone to call 911 but couldn't make it. At that moment, Brett rushed at him in a frenzy. Leland and Brett started a fierce fight, spreading throughout the house and turning it into a bloody mess. Taking advantage of Brett's distraction, Leland sneaked out without being detected. He crawled to the neighbor's house and passed out right in front of it. The kind neighbors immediately called the police. Meanwhile, Brett angrily ran back to the yard and saw AJ, injured, trying to crawl away. Obsessed with the desire to kill his brother, Brett chased after AJ before the neighbors discovered him. However, while chasing AJ, Brett was surprised to find that Leland had told the neighbors everything. From that moment on, Brett had no chance to save himself. The police were about to arrive at the crime scene and put an end to his bloody journey. Brett's murder plan had failed. In desperation, Brett decided to surrender and returned to the house. There, he sat on the porch, holding a bottle of water, and waited for the police to arrive. When the police and ambulance arrived, paramedics confirmed that their mother and Chris had passed away. AJ still had signs of life, but his condition was critical. However, on the way to the hospital, AJ passed away due to his injuries. Leland, despite his serious injuries, survived. He was taken to the hospital for treatment and medical attention and gradually began to recover. Meanwhile, Brett was arrested at the scene of the crime and faced serious charges of first-degree murder and attempted murder of his brother. The news left Kristen reeling, especially since their wedding was only 3 weeks away. Kristen was devastated when she learned the truth about her lover. Brett's criminal past, including a robbery conviction, financial hardship, unemployment, and the horrific murder of his family, left her in disbelief. She wondered how she could have lived with this man all this time without knowing the truth. Kristen immediately called off the wedding and returned to her apartment. There, she discovered a strange device that Brett had made to create an alibi. Mistaking it for an explosive device, she panicked and called the police. The police quickly arrived at the scene, evacuated the residents of the building, and began to carefully examine the mysterious device. After a short time, they discovered that the device was just a clever invention of Brett's. Although initially concerned about the danger, the police later realized that the device was harmless. However, they were impressed by Brett's extraordinary ingenuity and care. His intelligence and inner strength were undeniable, but unfortunately, he used them for the wrong purpose. At trial, Brett pleaded guilty and made a deal with the prosecution. He admitted that his actions constituted second-degree murder and hoped for a lighter sentence. Brett explained that he only intended to use the crossbow to scare his mother and have a serious talk with her. He wanted his mother to finally understand and support him, but things got out of hand. Brett claimed that he had no intention of hurting his brothers, they were simply in the wrong place at the wrong time. The prosecution believed that the defendant had planned to harm his mother from the beginning, not just stop at a conversation. They argued that Brett had brought the crossbow with the intention of killing Susan and should be held strictly responsible. As a result, he was convicted of first-degree murder of his mother and second-degree murder of his brother. The court handed down harsh sentences, 3 life terms with the possibility of parole after 25 years. In addition, Brett was sentenced to 10 years in prison for the attempted murder of his brother Leland. All sentences were to run concurrently, meaning he could only apply for early release after a quarter of a century. Brett's only surviving brother, Leland, received the sentence with relief. Despite the pain and bitterness of the loss, Leland truly respected Brett's remorse. In Leland's mind, his brother was not a bad person at heart but had lost his way in life. Brett had taken the path of deceit and was eventually mired in the quagmire of his own lies. He could no longer get out, which led to a terrible tragedy. Brett Ryan's terrifying story serves as a warning to us all. It demonstrates that small lies and the concealment of truth can lead to dire consequences. When we continue to lie, the lies grow and accumulate, becoming unmanageable. As a result, not only is the liar's life ruined, but so are the lives of their loved ones. Brett Ryan had the opportunity to change after his first prison sentence. He had the support of his girlfriend and a loving family, and he could have gone to school and found a job. However, he chose to lie, leading to a disastrous outcome and ruining more than one life. Whether Brett truly admitted his mistake or just wanted a lighter sentence is not as important as the lessons he learns while serving his life sentence. Can he look back on his life, reflect on his mistakes, and strive to become a better version of himself? Only Brett knows the answer. However, his story certainly makes us reflect on our own actions.